very strong friends.
It is I, Ipernick, the Great is Silent, and I welcome you to the 4th season premiere of Italian Politician of the Week. Today we are talking about Matteo Salvini, party secretary of Lega, former Minister of the Interior, and arguably one of the most popular politicians in Italy since 2018. Now, the premise of this series is mostly to educate foreigners in what really is happening in Italy, how the political machine works, who makes it work, and most importantly, how it impacts the rest of Europe. As a human being, I am imperfect and therefore often not objective and even biased, but instead of hiding it and claiming my takes to be factual, I acknowledge and embrace my imperfections by openly stating my opinion as such, in the hopes of starting a conversation in the comments. However, this episode will be a bit different because Salvini is much more than a politician with his own history, ideals, and voter base. He is a symbol, a cause of a problem that has a very negative impact on political discourse. Loved by many for what he says rather than what he does, Salvini stole the heart of nearly a third of Italians at one point for being able to say exactly what everyone was thinking. Unfortunately, this variety came at a price of coherence. I guess some would call it populism, but Salvini doesn't exactly fall into that definition. Journalist Marcel Padovani actually puts it best. Matteo Salvini is only an opportunist demagogue who resorts to populism when he needs it. Then, if Salvini isn't a populist, what is he? Born in Milan in 1973, he was a journalist and radio host for Padania and Radio Padania. He signed up to Lega Nord in 1990 under the leadership of Umberto Bossi back when the party was federalist. He was the director of Radio Padania from 1999 to 2013, city council member from 1994 to 2004 in Milan, and member of the European and Italian Parliament throughout the 2000s. Things changed radically in 2012 when the leader of Lega Nord, Umberto Bossi, was forced to retire from political life due to numerous charges of corruption and misuse of party funds. His successor, Maroni, is chosen as a temporary successor while the party gets itself on its feet again. The power vacuum allowed Salvini to swoop in and to become party secretary in 2013. However, he was a lot more ambitious than his predecessors. He wanted Lega Nord to drop the Nord in its name and turn it from a niche to an actual force to be reckoned with that could actually challenge Forza Italia and the Democratic Party. He started campaigning all over Italy, not just the Nord, and eventually Lega Nord turned into just Lega. By 2017, his current had become a majority in the party, allowing him to be reconfirmed party secretary in the Congress of the same year. In the 2018 elections, Lega presented itself in the center-right coalition with Forza Italia and Fratelli d'Italia. While Meloni and Berlusconi advocated for their respective ideologies, Salvini almost gave the audience a blank check and repeated exactly what they wanted him to say. He listened to the people, figured out what people perceived to be the main problems the country was facing, and then told them they were right and that the reason why this was happening was because of the immigrants and the fact that the government preferred to help them rather than the Italians. His motto was Italians first, and if you voted for Salvini, he promised to kick all foreigners out and make Italy care about Italians again. The party achieved a historic result of around 17% of the votes, making it the most voted in the coalition, hence turning Salvini the coalition leader, finally putting Berlusconi in the sidelines. When the time came to choose a president, Salvini reached an agreement with Luigi Di Maio and put Giuseppe Conte as the shared premier, thus giving life to the first yellow-green government in Republican history. From June 1st, 2018 to the 5th of September 2019, Salvini was vice president and interior minister. In the 2019 European elections, using the same campaign premises, Lega obtained 34% of the votes, making it the most voted party in Italy. In August of the same year, given the differences between the two majority parties, Lega, thanks to the consensus obtained in the administrative and European elections presented a motion of no confidence. After the treachery committed, the Five Star Movement made a new alliance with the Democratic Party, to which Conte felt more aligned with, and made a new government. Conte's second cabinet lasted until January 2021, when Draghi came around, but if you want to know more about this, I suggest looking into Conte's video. Now, Draghi's cabinet is a government of national unity composed of ministers of his own choosing, some of which are from Lega, but Salvini has had little more than a marginal approach lately, as his support dwindles slightly. But he is still very popular because he is always on TV and is very outspoken. Well, then what does he talk about? Many people consider Salvini a wonderful speaker, someone who is easy to understand because he uses very colloquial terminology and thinks like the average Joe. He speaks like the buddy you meet at the bar after work, and I get how that is charming for many people. But the problem isn't really him or the way he speaks, but the way he talks about certain things. He's not the first politician to give simple solutions to very complicated problems, but the way he does it doesn't encourage people to look more into it and makes people accept the simplest answer to things rather than the most logical or the most efficient. There is a big difference between liking a speaker for being persuasive and for liking him for saying things you agree with. Someone is persuasive when he's able to change your mind on things or makes you look at things differently. Salvini doesn't do that. Salvini is superficial, often obvious, and encourages misinformation and superficiality. Like the average internet user, Salvini has to have an opinion on everything, regardless of his knowledge on the matter. Since I imagine many of you wonder what his positions are, I have listed a bunch of topics that he talks about often. Let's start with immigration. Salvini's premise on immigration is that these people come from poor countries and seek better living conditions and opportunity. Salvini's solution, though, is to quote-unquote help them by keeping them at home, which means, I guess, to help these people by investing in the third world. It doesn't really elaborate further. Then he wants to close the ports, I guess to stop the immigrants from landing and steal our jobs or something. But what if one or more of these passengers are in need of medical attention? What if the ship is sinking? What if they are in Italian waters? You can't just let them drown. The reason why international aid and closing the ports doesn't quite solve the problem is because the issue is a lot bigger and more complicated than Salvini makes it out to be. These are all very important sides that need to be kept in consideration when dealing with this humanitarian crisis. I'd be happy to explore it one day by talking about Salvini's predecessor Marco Minniti and the deals he made with the Libyan authorities for the safe passage of these ships while he was Minister of Internal Affairs. Let me know what you guys think. Next up, we have the European Union. When people ask Salvini who is to blame for whatever problem Italy is facing, he usually blames three things for reasons that are understandably intertwined: the left, immigration, and the European Union, specifically the euro. As he puts it, the European Union with its monetary policy is some sort of crime against humanity, and it interferes too much with Italian policies and businesses. As they say, if you don't want to take responsibility for something, just blame it on the European Union. I do it all the time, but I think Salvini might be taking this a bit too far. While it is true that ever since Italy joined the Eurozone, growth has been slower, but blaming it entirely on the currency is once again superficial. Admittedly, I have had opportunities before to actually explain why this is the case in previous videos, like in Prodi's or Paragones, but the fact is that when it comes to trade, transportation, welfare and freedom in general, things have improved significantly since we joined the Union. It has its problems, but Italy is far from being one of them, regardless of what other countries say. The lira was also a weak-ass currency, so you seriously want to go back to it? Get out of here. Now let's talk about economics. When it comes down to political problems in the economic field, Salvini has repeatedly expressed himself against the free market, referring to it as total chaos, again without elaborating further. Since supply and demand are too hard for him to understand, he expressed himself more in favor of protectionism, because it will protect Italian products and businesses from the evil international competition of the globalized market that usually encourages technological, social, and scientific advancements in the production of these wares. Despite this, he is a firm supporter of measures of strict neoliberal compliance, such as the introduction of the single rate tax or flat tax, as well as being in favor of fiscal federalism, exactly like Bossi back in the day. Putting aside the fact that being for economic federalism and protectionism doesn't make a lot of sense, his position is based entirely on the idea that our products and the way we make them are the best, regardless of the market demand and whatever everyone else says. Therefore, the economy should reflect their beliefs. Protectionism usually also creates a bubble around a country's economy, hence making exportation a lot harder, and that is usually very bad for growth and jobs and stuff. But I don't think Salvini minds, for as long as he can still get free food at town fairs. Next, we have society and civil rights. On the social front, Salvini is extremely opposed to civil unions, same-sex marriage, adoption by gay couples, and supports measures to prevent and/or combat homosexuality. He is also strongly opposed to the legalization of soft drugs, including cannabis light and euthanasia. However, he declares himself in favor of the legalization of prostitution and the reopening of brothels, which is very odd since he goes out of his way to kiss Christian symbols during his rallies and encourages people to pray for him before big elections, which is kind of offensive. He is also strongly opposed to the Mancino law and the Zan law proposal that include legal aggravating circumstances if a crime was done with racist and/or homophobic intent, respectively. There is not much to say here that I haven't said before. His positions are a clear indication of his inability to grow as a person, since he does nothing but hang on to ideals and principles that are outdated at best and very offensive at worst. When it comes to foreign policy, he usually supports neo-democracies like Putin's Russia and Orban's Hungary. To give him some credit though, he doesn't seem to agree with them on an ideological level, but only because his party receives funds from both of these countries. I talked about that a bit in Pilon's video. There was a lot of drama in 2019 about the 49 million euros missing in Lega's financial report after one of Salvini's collaborators went to Russia for a conventional meeting. Back then, people were spamming on social media things like, "What happened to the 49 million, Salvini?" It got so bad that he actually had to put these words in some sort of blacklist, so as soon as he wrote these things on his social media, he got instantly banned. It was hilarious. He was also a Trump supporter, although he deleted the pictures of him with the "Make America Great Again" hat after the Capitol Hill assault, which is something I can honestly appreciate. He also went to North Korea with Antonio Razzi. Now that I picked Salvini's positions apart, I really want to talk about Lega for a moment, specifically their economists, who are, in my humble opinion, truly underrated, perhaps for a specific reason. Togliatti is one of them, the current Minister of Economic Development, who aligns very well with Draghi for his liberal policies that honestly bring a lot of faith. Other notables are Claudio Borghi, Alberto Bagnai, and Antonio Maria Rinaldi, three Eurosceptics that have brought up very interesting arguments for why the euro should be not necessarily removed but definitely reevaluated and perhaps changed. Even though I don't exactly see myself aligning with any of them, I'd be happy to talk about them eventually if you guys vote for them. These are just a few of Lega members that actually play a respectable role in political discourse. There are also some that hold similar positions to Salvini that actually bring up constructive arguments when fighting for values values or for protectionism, you know? So why do they allow themselves to be represented by Salvini? I think it's because they realize that his strongest point is to gather votes, and that's all they let him do now. It's not exactly a secret that the members of Lega don't really think that Salvini is capable to govern or to do much more of what he's doing right now, especially since the last time he was in government, he passed a terrible decree that made it harder for immigrants in general to apply for citizenship or any sort of identification document, hence creating the number of invisibles, hence people with basically no rights. The safety decrees were done to reduce crime and immigration, but what it did was just to leave many people without a home or even an identity. Salvini often brags about the fact that when he was in office, the ships coming into ports decreased in numbers. But detention centers were full anyway, and it turned out that immigrants were landing in Italy regardless, thanks to organized crime, who then picked up these people to work in their farms, plantations or labs. The latter two were not exactly dedicated to food production, although the agricultural system seems to be a sector very underrated and often run by organized groups that rely on borderline slavery. The one who brought attention to the problem was Abubakar Somauro, a unionist of African descent who has dedicated his life to the fight for the rights of the underpaid farmers with no identity that are abused every day. Again, another person I really want to talk about. I think that's about all of it. I wanted to talk about vaccines and the Green Pass too, but Salvini's opinions are kind of nonsensical because they attempt to oppose and agree with Draghi at the same time. This usually also leads to misunderstandings and the spread of misinformation thanks to other politicians that I hope to cover in future episodes too. I guess we can call it a day. What do you guys think about Salvini? Do you agree with my takes? Has your mind been changed? Regardless, I hope you learned something today. Remember to suggest and to vote for the politicians you want to see in future polls. In the last video of the month, only people who donate to my subscribe star can actually vote. So be sure to sign up there if you want to support me in a more substantial way. Check out also my merch in the description, and I will see you next week with a brand new video. Goodbye.